In this video, you aren't going anywhere for a while. License email mailboxes of all former employees? I don't recommend it, but okay. And EM ends my engagement and gets me banned from a steakhouse all in one night. You aren't going anywhere for a while. This involves a rather popular bar in a major northern UK city. This involved a male Karen, henceforth known as MK. It was early in the day and the bar wasn't open until 7 p.m. that evening. I arrived at the bar, my task for the day being to await a scaffold being delivered and erected and then use the said scaffold to remove some old CCTV cameras and upgrade them to much better ones. I have a full set of keys for the bar, and the bar has its own private car park which is protected by locking drop-down bollards. They're not automatic or anything fancy like that, so I have to pull up on the street outside, lock my van up, walk over and drop the bollards, which are usually soaking as the pits they're installed in invariably fill up with rainwater. And then finally I pull my van inside. I usually then raise the bollards to stop others parking in there. The place in question is extremely close to the Social Security Benefits office, and the bollards were indeed installed because their clientele were constantly using it rather than pay to park like the rest of the population. So this morning I pulled in, got out of my van, and dropped the bollards so I could park in the car park. The scaffold truck with the team on was about 20 minutes behind me, so I had time to go in and have a quick walk to the coffee shop just around the corner. Unfortunately, just after I dropped the bollards, MK drove up in his BMW X5, pulled into the car park, and parked. I followed him in and also parked. I tapped on his window and told him it was a private car park and he needed to leave. He was on a hands-free call and he simply gestured me away. So I tapped again and he wound down his window and shouted, "I'm on a fucking phone call," wound his window up and began ignoring me. Although I could have been really malicious and locked him in, I didn't. I simply walked around the corner and got my coffee, leaving the bollards down so he could leave if he wanted. About 5 minutes later I came back, coffee in hand. He was still there, still on the phone, and I could see the scaffold lorry on the bottom of the hill making its way up. Again, I tapped on his window and he mouthed, "Fuck off," at me. The lorry arrived. I waved at them to reverse into the small car park, which they did. It blocked up the whole car park. The team of 3 rather big muscular guys jumped out and started unloading and building the scaffold. A fairly big affair made of around 50 bars and over 4 levels up the back of the building. 10 minutes passed and the first levels were starting to appear like a rather fascinating mechano set. I don't know the first thing about this stuff, so I just watched in awe as they flung together bars and planks like monkeys on speed. MK finished his important call, then got out of his rather fancy X5 and walked across to the social services building. Now, I presume he thought we'd all be done by the time he got out, so he could just jump in his car and drive off. Almost an hour passed. The scaffold got taller and wider and the lorry got emptier, but there was still a whole level to go on top, and as they get higher, the building speed slows down. I gave them a hand by passing parts up, but I couldn't actually do anything else because I wasn't skilled or qualified. MK came back after about an hour and said to me, "You have to let me out." I said back, "Mate, you aren't going anywhere. I tried to tell you, but you told me to fuck off." He started to get aggressive and pushed me, at which point the scaffolders came down and started to back me up. They looked scary. He didn't. He jumped in his X5 and sat there on his phone. 10 minutes later, the police rolled up. Apparently, he phoned them because we were blocking him in and had threatened him. I talked calmly to the police officer and explained what actually happened, explaining that with it being a bar, the whole incident was on CCTV. I gave them my details and the details of my company, and the scaffolders did the same. Then the second officer started checking our vehicles. I thought this was a bit curious, but whatever. So the first officer then asked the scaffolders if they could indeed move and let the guy out, and they obliged, although it took them a couple of minutes to throw some ties over their load. We were all very compliant, although the police did tell us off. It's an offense to knowingly obstruct someone or block someone in a car park or parking space, even on private land. MK then got in his BMW and reversed out through the gates, at which point the second officer gestured him to pull the car up on the road and get out of it. So it transpired after a little more questioning that MK had neither road tax, insurance, nor did he even have a driving license. The reason the police had let him get out of the car park was because no crime was being committed until he attempted to drive it. Once he attempted that, he was in violation of the Road Traffic Act and they could seize his car. Thus, the final piece of this story involves the police sending him walking down to the bus stop whilst the second officer drove his 2-year-old BMW X5 to the impound yard where he would have to pay a lot of money to get it out, and could only get it back if someone with a valid license and insurance went to collect it. I found out later that he had paid for a £2 parking ticket. He would have been over £1,100 better off that day after the cost of getting the car back, plus the hefty fine he was given for driving without the correct documentation or qualification. License email mailboxes for all former employees? I don't recommend it, but okay. Cast, bad IT director, IT director. Dental commander, IT commando. Computer commander, IT Joe. IT boy, hacker god, hacker dude, and IT Bob. These were all real nicknames we gave to that guy as we dealt with his antics. Sorry if confusing, but personally my favorite part of dealing with him. Everyone else as named. A few years ago at my previous job, I was a senior technician at a managed service provider of IT services. We were a small company and we were often yes men to just about anybody who would offer us money in exchange to their requests. The owner of our company would not push back against those that made crazy demands, overly cheap or even overly disrespectful clients. This led us to doing a lot of jobs out of our normal scope, at cost and a lot of times being cussed out for no good reason. Our primary services included on-site service and support and cloud hosting of in-house and third-party solutions, one of which was Microsoft 365, which obviously is very commonly used for email services. We would keep living knowledge base pages on each company, their services, environment info, and even policies of which different companies may demand things like only follow through with support requests from office managers, or if admin access is needed for this particular cluster of servers, contact Jim. One of our clients was a dental company that was of decent size. They had about 10 locations and were growing. Customers loved them, and we often took pleasure going on site as it was heaven dealing with such polite people in contrast to what we had to deal with most of the time otherwise. They would even demand that we have some lunch if we happened to be on site during the Friday luncheon. It was great. They used 365 services and only used E3 licensing for their users, which was total overkill, $20 per user per month when most employees barely even checked email, let alone made an Excel doc. They wouldn't take our recommendation to go use the essentials at $5 per user instead, unless it was an office manager or HQ worker. Also, they had a decently high turnover rate as it was a college-type town and a lot of students would work there in one of the various positions to make decent pay and good experience while attending school. They would come and go. The IT director, literally only a title anyone can wear nowadays, he was pretty bad at his job, of this company called us one day cussing because there were a bunch of mailboxes that were not licensed. We tried to explain that these were mailboxes that we converted to shared of employees that had left. Doing so allows us to remove the license of the mailbox while keeping all of the mail intact and very easily accessible if we needed to delegate access to someone who needs to review. You basically get to archive the mailbox for free. He barely let us even speak, and the tech who actually took the call was flustered, so I took it over completely. Using my best well-seasoned customer service charm, I tried to explain to him the same, yet to no avail. They had 180-ish unused mailboxes that he wanted us to convert to a user box and add one of those premium I'm drinking Stella in a fancy glass licenses at $20 a pop per month. He resorted to personally insulting me, telling me I'm a tech who got promoted too fast and I should try a 4-year school next time, and demanded it be done right away with no specifics on how it be done. Bless your heart, man. Okay, we'll do it. Luckily, we record the calls. Also, I'll make note that this company has a policy that we're not allowed to use PowerShell, which for those that don't know is a terminal that allows us to perform action by command line. We can write scripts for special tasks or even do things in bulk, saving lots of time. I knew this very well and I begged them repeatedly to let us use PowerShell in the past to no avail. So we ordered pizza in the office and got to work, converted every last mailbox to normal and licensed it. We even converted a spider into a god as he struck fear in us with his hairy legs and many eyes. We weren't worthy. After we finished, we even had a contest to see who could frisbee Office 2003 discs the furthest, since we had a binder full of them, as well as a few other goofy games for about a half hour before we dipped out. It was a fun late night at work in the end. A month or so rolls by, and our accountant had sent out all of the invoices to our customers on that fine second Monday of the month. Our dental commander called us at 12:03 p.m., 3 minutes after he would have gotten his, and he had blown a head gasket. He finally saw the bill for the additional 180 E3 licenses, plus taxes and fees. He was threatening to sue if me and my two coworkers and our owner didn't fix it. One thing about our pushover owner is that he didn't take kindly to someone insulting his workers directly, as he took it personally since he interviewed everyone himself. He listened to the call recording after we begged him to do so. He did not like what he heard from IT Commando. He didn't give in, and he even added a little razzle-dazzle that we'd never seen before. He even noted that because it was a written policy that we can't use PowerShell, we should have billed the request as a project since they demanded it be done in such a short time and was not a normal support request. In order for us to remove the licenses, they would also have to have this done at the same project rate, and they would have to pay for the bill as well as the two projects now, as we wouldn't touch it. Period. Our project rate was $125 an hour for junior techs and $175 for senior techs. It was going to be about 2 hours per head, all at the senior rate for each leg of the ordeal, so about 12 hours all in all, as there were 3 of us. Computer Commander didn't know that the owner of his company and ours were kind of good friends for nearly 2 decades, would occasionally play golf together and whatever company owners do when not at the office. The dental company owner and IT Joe came to our office immediately. Before allowing the discussion to proceed, far past hello, our company owner played both calls on full blast over one of those Logitech 2.1 systems. It was loud. Dental company owner was absolutely shocked at what was heard, as this guy was always looked at in high regards. Hacker God was pale white as he sat there and didn't move a muscle. He immediately told the IT boy to call an Uber back to the HQ and to stand by in the conference room. He wouldn't be driving back with him. He apologized profusely to us techs, nearly in tears it seemed. He wrote a check for one of the projects and the bill. We agreed to undo the work for free, as he was a really good client of ours and was always really nice. He gave us each $100 Visa gift cards the next week and bought us lunch in our own office a few times, all out of his own pocket. Hacker Dude was fired as soon as the owner of the company got back to the office, and he entrusted us to make love to his IT systems while he found his replacement, who was ultimately better in every way. They took every recommendation of ours, including reducing the license types for the majority of their workers, while confused as to why this was ever a debated topic. That's the one company I truly miss at my last job, a good client. EM ends my engagement and gets me banned from a steakhouse all in one night. Okay, so my girlfriend and I were really engaged to be engaged. We'd both agreed we wanted to get married, but I hadn't done the formal proposal yet because we wanted to meet each other's families first. Neither lived nearby. I always thought the old trope about meeting the in-laws being a big fiasco was a myth, both because I was younger and more naive then, and because I'm lucky to have easy parents. My girlfriend met them for a few hours. Once we were alone, just me and them, I told them my intentions, and my mom asked, "Does she have any kids already?" And my dad asked, "Does she have a good solid job?" And they both asked, "You really love her?" And that was that. I had their full support for the marriage. I thought meeting her parents would be the same. Some grilling was to be expected, but as long as I was honest and respectful, it would all be fine. Relevant fact, they had my girlfriend when they were teenagers, by surprise, so now had a do-over daughter, their words, not mine, who was just 6 years old. My girlfriend and I made the trip up to their city, and I met them for the first time over dinner at a steakhouse. It was pretty upscale, and we'd scheduled the dinner for 8 p.m., so I was surprised to see they brought the kid along with them. I met everyone at once, and the initial awkwardness settled once we'd sat down. We were making great small talk when the 6-year-old said she was thirsty. No big deal, right? Well, all of a sudden, Ellen starts screaming, "Water! Water! Water!" A waiter came rushing over to see what the commotion was, and without even making eye contact with the poor guy, Ellen went, "We've been here forever and no one's even gotten us any water. My daughter's been asking." We'd been sitting for about 15 or 20 minutes without service, but they were visibly behind, and there were no circumstances that would have warranted that shouting. I should have realized from how unfazed everyone else at the table was that I should be bracing myself for a long night, but I couldn't imagine what was to come at that point. The waiter rushed over with water and apologized for the delay, explaining a few very large parties had arrived all at once. The guy seemed sincere and quite affable, so I thought the water would just be an animality in an otherwise pleasant night. Then Ellen kicked into full gear. "We'll need a kid's menu," she informed the waiter. He said that they didn't have a kid's menu, but the chef could simplify most dishes. "What do you mean you don't have a kid's menu?" Ellen replied in total disbelief, as though he'd said they didn't have a fire exit. He explained they didn't get too many child visitors and that there were enough plain foods on the menu that no separate menu had ever been necessary. Ellen sighed dramatically and waved him away, literally without saying a word, waved him off from the table. I tried to give him an apologetic glance, but understandably, he didn't look back our way. I was so glad the poor guy left and didn't have to be subjected to her anymore. Meanwhile, she turned her attention on me, and I almost wished he'd come back. At least he was getting paid to be here. She was like, "So, you're a screenwriter?" And I explained, "Well, yes and no. I want to be, but it's hard to get a job in that field that you can support yourself on, so I'm working at a nonprofit right now. There's a screenwriting component to the job, though, so I'm really happy there." Ellen turned to her 6-year-old and went, "Hear that, hon? You want to be sure to snag a man who works for profit. Learn from this. It's not too late for you." I couldn't tell if she was trying to be funny or not, so I just let it pass, looking over to my girlfriend to see if she was even considering speaking up on my behalf. Nope. The waiter came back visibly nervous. That hurt because he was so relaxed and personable at the start of the meal. He asked if we'd like to hear the specials before we ordered, and Ellen said sure. Here's how that went. Waiter: "First, we have a lightly seared strip stick." Ellen: "Next." Waiter: Okay. "Then we have a broiled leg of grass-fed." Ellen: "Next." Waiter: we have a pasta primavera mixed with." Ellen: "Next!" And on until he'd gone through all 7 or 10 specials, even though she ultimately ordered off the menu a plain ribeye, well done. She tried to order her daughter the same, but the kid said she wanted plain mashed potatoes, so Ellen let her get mashed potatoes alone for dinner. Then she sent the waiter away. The rest of us hadn't even ordered yet, and everyone else just sat there like it was entirely normal. I waited for someone to say something, thinking it was more her older daughter, my girlfriend's place, or her husband's, but when no one did, I couldn't help myself. Was the one steak and potatoes going to be for all of us, or... My girlfriend explained in the tone used for a tourist violating a sacred local taboo. My mom always has the waiter put the kids' food in first, so it can get started right away. We'll order once the kitchen has hers. I thought she was joking. Since Ellen didn't just order her kids' food, she also ordered her own dinner too. So I laughed. "Something funny?" Ellen asked. Then I realized she was serious, and I shut up. Thankfully, her dad at least recognized that what was normal for them might not be as regular to me and tried to lighten the mood with a change of topic. But not even 10 minutes after we'd ordered, I guess technically 5 minutes after we'd ordered, 10 minutes after she and her daughter had ordered, Ellen started in again. Another table that had been there long before we were got a side order of mashed potatoes with their meal. Ellen threw a total conniption. She was sputtering so inaudibly that none of us could figure out what was wrong at first. Finally, she managed to flag down some busboy who barely spoke English and began laying into him like he just sideswiped her on the freeway. He kept trying to explain he wasn't a server and he could go get one, but she wouldn't stop to breathe long enough for him to find someone who could actually help. All the while, I kept looking at my girlfriend for signs of embarrassment, or at the very least, irritation, but you wouldn't have known if she was even hearing any of this. Our waiter came over, somehow still feigning a smile despite knowing what he was walking into, and Ellen actually goes, "Why did that table get mashed potatoes and ours haven't come yet?" The waiter kindly but concisely explained, "Well, ma'am, those people ordered potatoes before your party had placed their order." Ellen looks this man dead in the eye, finally, and says, "Well, it doesn't matter when they ordered it. My daughter is the youngest one here. Her food should come out first." You could tell the waiter was working hard to restrain himself at this point. He explained it was a first come, first served policy and age didn't help one way or the other. He offered to go check on the potatoes. Ellen agreed, or more specifically said, "Yeah, you better." But I was clocking him and he went right back to his server station because we had only just ordered a few minutes ago. 3 or 5 more minutes passed, during which we could have no other discussion at the table except how awful this restaurant was, how hungry the poor baby was, who hadn't said a word about being hungry this whole time and was contently playing her loud iPad game without headphones, disturbing all the other diners around us, and how America has lost all respect for motherhood because it's just a me, me, me culture now. I chimed in. I'm with you on that last part. And to my utter shock, instead of laughing at my joke, my girlfriend seemed annoyed with me. So after a few minutes, the waiter comes back and says the potatoes will be out very soon. Ellen then goes and does something that, again, I thought was just a myth. She took 3 singles and a 5 out of her wallet and put them on the table in full view of the waiter. Then she took 1 single away and said, "Every table I see getting potatoes before us is a bill gone." I was absolutely mortified. The waiter, to his unending credit, just took a deep breath and said, "I don't have control over the order in which the kitchen fires tickets, but what I can tell you is it should be out any minute," and left without saying anything disparaging. I had been holding my tongue all night as well in the name of my relationship, but once the tip hit the table, the $8 tip for a $100 plus bill on top of all else, I figured if my girlfriend was half the woman I thought that she was, then she wouldn't mind my speaking up at this point. If anything, she'd be supportive, right? So I scooted my chair back a bit and said, "Listen, I know what you're doing with the cash on the table, but that kind of thing makes me really uncomfortable and it's just not called for. Please put the money away or we can just continue this some other time." My girlfriend's dad spits back, "What? How cheap do you have to be to not believe in tipping service workers?" Before I could process whether he was serious or yanking my chain, Ellen shocked me with, "No, you know what? You're right. This isn't necessary." I should have known better than to be relieved. She folded the bills back into her wallet, patiently waited for the next plate of mashed potatoes to be carried out, and when it wasn't delivered to us, it was a very common side dish at this place, a steakhouse, she went right up to a stranger's table and picked it up off their table. She half explained something about her daughter starving to death as she was walking away with the stranger's food, but unsurprisingly, that wasn't convincing enough for them. The old lady she took it from followed her right over to our table and tried to take it back. I was already searching for my coat tag in preparation to go, but a shoving match was beginning to unfold between Ellen and an elderly woman with a tennis ball walker, and far be it from me to sit through all that had happened only to leave just as the night was getting interesting. The elderly woman was like, "Give me back my potatoes. Who are you?" And the poor little girl was like, "Mommy, it's okay. Don't take someone else's potatoes." But it all fell on deaf ears. Ellen yelled at the old lady, "How could you sit there and eat these when my daughter hasn't even been served yet? She's sitting here hungry, just a little girl, and you're over there stuffing your face. Come on. Other potatoes will be out any minute." And the old lady, got to love her, was like, "Great. If they'll be out any minute, then what's the fucking problem?" To which Ellen still found holier than thou ground, gasping, "Language, please." Finally, the waiter, and this time someone higher up as well, I think the manager, thank God, came over to separate them, as they had begun to raise their voices and cause a disturbance. Staff had already asked Ellen to turn down her daughter's iPad multiple times without heed, and I'm guessing the waiter informed management about the tip on the table stunt she pulled, because this was their last straw. They told us we were going to have to leave the restaurant, but we don't even have our food yet. Ellen complained at the guy. This was clearly not the manager's first rodeo. "You can take the food that's already been served free of charge. Everything else will be canceled. Please leave immediately." The old lady didn't miss her chance to knock the potatoes right onto the floor, so we couldn't try to take them with us. Nothing else had been served yet, so we had to leave without any food. When my girlfriend and I were finally alone in our car, she said, "Can you believe that?" And I said, "Not at all, and I really can't believe you didn't warn me." And she went, "How could I have known about any of that?" And, confused, I asked, "Is she not usually like that?" Even more confused than me, my girlfriend asked, "Who?" "Your mom. What's my mom got to do with the terrible service at that place?" That was the beginning of the end of our relationship. The fact that she didn't see anything wrong with her mother's behavior and that I'd be marrying into that situation shook me too deep. We both dodged a bullet in more ways than one. In hindsight, we weren't right for each other, regardless of who her family was. Her mom saved us both a lot of time and heartache, helping me realize in one night what would have probably taken us years otherwise. Within a month, we'd moved into separate apartments and gone on a break that ended up lasting forever. I'm not sorry I won't see you again, Ellen. I'm sorry any waitstaff ever will, though.